Hear me now? Very good. Thank you very much. First of all, I hope everyone had a good lunch. Good afternoon. I think the people in my breakout session know I like to be interactive. Good afternoon. Fantastic. Good to see and hear you. My name is David Patrician, and it is a great honor and privilege to be the moderator for our session today, Narratives of Hope, Media, Civil Society, and the Pursuit of Peace. Before we begin, just one thing, it really is a special panel for me. It's my first time being here in Bangladesh, and the title of our meeting is the Bay of Bengal Conversations. I had lunch with our panelists, and it is no secret that there are some differences between Pakistan, between Bangladesh, and between India. We know that, but the only way to get through those differences is through open communication. So in the spirit of the Bay of Bengal Conversation, a great honor to have members of all three of those countries here, and Europe represented with the German Foundation. Please welcome our guests today. You can give me a warm round of applause. So today we want to talk about how truthful reporting, constructive dialogue, and community-driven action can reduce tensions and foster peace, and how these sectors can reshape narratives around conflict and security, influence public opinion, and advocate for politics that encourage reconciliation in fractured societies. I've prepared some questions. We'll have a small discussion here. Afterwards, we will open them up to our Q&A. Very important by the Q&A, again, we may have our own personal politics or opinions, but please try to keep the emotions to the side and just try to get to the question at hand. I'd like to begin with my first question to Arjun, sitting next to me. Arjun, during lunch we talked about social media and also a little bit about, is this a post-truth era? If you look at the United States, recently Donald Trump was re-elected as the president. It was reported that over his campaign period, he did hundreds, if not thousands, of disinformations, misinformations, and lies. So the question I have to you is, does the truth still matter to us and to our civil societies? Arjun.
Namaskar, pranam. Good afternoon. Glad to be in conversation, glad to be in Bangladesh. Thank you, Zalur Bhai, for inviting me. Thank you, Team CGS, for organizing this. And yeah, like you said, we brought the Germans to talk about India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan.
Yes.
Well, we'll go ahead with your question first. So we spoke about media and civil society. See, broadly, if you see, the way a civilization or any country, any region progresses, how people progress, how society evolves is through conversations. For the longest time, and I think academia tends to underestimate at times, but the only way a society is going to change is through these conversations. People have to be interacting with each other, and which will, in time, perhaps bring a change about. With regards to supposed truth and the question on media and social media, I think you've got to see it, the change, what has happened in the last 1.5 decades. Data democratization has changed media, changed conversations happening across the world. If I have to speak about the subcontinent, I can definitely talk about India. Around 15 years ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was one of the first, early adopters of social media. He had his Facebook page. He was very active on social media, interacting directly with the voters and using tools like YouTube, using Twitter to interact with people. Prior to that, there are, and I call it traditional media, which had a certain strong hold on narratives and opinions, and in fact they would give direction to opinions which are going to take perhaps any of those conversations forward. Thanks to internet and thanks to data democratization, thanks to cheap data plans, people in general, common population, people who otherwise were perhaps afraid to voice out their opinions on big stages or podiums, got an avenue to talk on, platforms. So Facebook, Awkward, Twitter, and all those platforms were filled with people who started sharing their informations. And that actually took away the power from traditional media houses. So if you speak about, and I can go on for it for as long as you want, but considering your example on US elections, it is believed, it's on both sides, the disinformation campaign, misinformation campaign, and not to be a supporter or hater of Donald Trump, the president-elect. People have their own opinions, but important point being that everybody is in an information warfare. Everybody is engaged in setting certain narratives. Everybody is fiercely battling out to peddle out their own agendas. And it's part of the larger game. It's part of the politics. It's part of governance. It's part of the larger game at play. Now, having said that, it is important to know that it's the people's voices which are being reflected. So what social media has essentially done now is ensure that people out there in some remote village in my state of Haryana can voice out or speak about their own truths or their own realities. It is not necessarily going to be some professor or some academic or some journalist sitting in some university in Delhi or elsewhere, and that perhaps becomes the only and solid truth. There are different interpretations, there are different perspectives, and social media has essentially given that. I think that's more or less what I believe on social media. This transition, of course, has been remarkable in many sense. How it goes forward, and there's also a self-correction. Consider it. See, humans or civilized, like I said, we talk, we want to do a self-correction. There are opinions, there are counter-opinions, and then a fresh opinion is formed. This is essentially how it happens on social media as well. Twitter, for example, has this thing called community notes. Prior to this, there were certain people who held a strong followership or on Twitter, and they could say something and it would seem like it's the gospel truth. But community notes now gives a way that somebody can point out that this information is wrong and that information is correct. So I think as we progress, these conversations are going to take us as community forward, and perhaps bring the world together as well.
I have one follow-up question. So media is, of course, subjective, although it should be objective. We're here now in Bangladesh. You're in neighboring India. When we had the student-led demonstrations, and I would say revolution a few months ago, could you tell us a few words about how the Indian media covered that event?
So in India, definitely conversations. I mean, it's a question which is seeking applause.
No, actually, I listen very closely to my speakers, but I'm thinking, if I'm a Bangladeshi student, I wonder how India is reporting about this. Just a spontan Idee in German. Thank you for the applause, but please.
So exactly. See, what had happened was when the revolution was taking shape in Bangladesh, many young students were voicing out their opinions. And in fact, it was these opinions which actually made this movement this big. If it was not for social media, it was not for data, it was not for voicing out their opinions on different platforms and reaching out elsewhere, it would not have happened. In India, definitely conversations were going on. People were talking about it. People knew that some change is happening. And Sheikh Hasina ji, I believe the conversation was she flew out to India. She may be elsewhere, and that's a question on foreign policy. But in India, definitely, there was a cause of concern. Naturally, Bangladesh and Pakistan, it's the same neighborhood, it's the larger Indian subcontinent. Any region progresses on continuous peace and economic, the economic prosperity is a consequence of continuous peace. And it's only natural. Countries and their neighbors would expect that. In India, definitely conversations going on. But like I was telling somebody earlier in the day, we need more of these conversations. We need more of these interactions. That I'm here, I'm getting to learn certain more perspectives about the entire movement. And exactly this is what is going to happen. I'll perhaps go back to Delhi and write a piece on how I saw Bangladesh, how there's a certain perspective that people will talk about, say in Delhi or Dubai, but when you're in Dhaka, you want to see, you see from close quarters that it's not as tricky or as complicated as, or as conflicting as some would like to say.
Super, thank you very much, Arjun. To our next guest, Debjoti, and again, just a coincidence, we have our two guests, first ones being Indians, but we had a wonderful lunch discussion. I enjoyed it very much. And I wanted to talk, you mentioned to me about the civil society key roles, and I certainly would like to ask you to expand on that. And another question, when we talk about NGOs, non-governmental organizations, does India report about these projects? I currently live in Germany, and NGOs are important, but they're not sexy. They don't get the headlines. And so my question is, how is it in India? Because a lot of times it's the bad news that goes to the first headlines around the world, and the good projects gets pushed back. So on that one, and also if you could outline a little bit about the civil society key roles that we discussed at lunch. Oh, you have to click on the microphone, then we can hear you good. Yeah.
Good
Super.
afternoon. We feel very good to be back in Dhaka again. I would like to first thank Zilur Bhai for inviting me to the Bay of Bengal conversation and being able to share dais with such a
Devdutta, if you could bring the microphone just a little bit closer to you.
erudite panel.
Super.
And speaking to such a distinguished audience. Your civil society today is omnipresent. We earlier used to talk about the media as the fourth pillar. Civil society has become the fifth pillar of democracy in India and across the world. And civil society is definitely playing a key role in many areas. The most important area in which civil society is playing a very important role is community engagement. In a country like India, in the country which I belong, it's a very big country, it's a very diverse country, it's a multi-religious, multilingual country, and there are different kinds of stakeholders with different kinds of interests. Civil society here can play a very important role in beginning dialogue, forging unity, bridging differences, and so community engagement is one area in which civil society can play a very important role. The next important function of civil society today in any society is conflict resolution. A lot of conflicts, a lot of differences, a lot of problems around. Here, civil society acts as a kind of a platform where they can bring the stakeholders together and they can actively engage, facilitate dialogue and engagement between different parties who may have diverse interests. So facilitating dialogue and conversation, and which in the long run can reduce conflict, is another very important and key role which a civil society can play. Crisis communication. And during times of crisis, we are seeing the different stakeholders walking in different directions. They don't want to sit together, and they don't want to think the way in which the others are thinking or ponder upon that what is their problem and what is mine. So another very, very important role of civil society is advocacy. In civil groups, we have, if it has proper representation, there are different kinds of people involved. And there, they can act as, provide advocacy on issues which at times become very, very critical. Civil society is today playing a very, very important role in capacity building also. Civil society is working with women, marginalized sections, with children, with people afflicted with different kinds of diseases. There are different kinds of civil societies working in very key and niche areas. And when they're working in these key and niche areas, civil society can help in capacity building, which is today very, very important. Everything can't be left to the government. Everything can't be left to government funding. Therefore, civil society can engage the corporate world, the government, and the people at large and bring them together and help in capacity building, which is, again, one of their very key and important functions. And lastly, I would talk about civil society plays a very important role in liaisoning. There are different stakeholders, and even within the government, there are different levels. Liaisoning function is a very, very important role that civil society plays today. But as I say, things are not so easy. There are multiple challenges which civil society faces in any society. There are restrictions from the government of the day, as we have been listening. Civil society often faces different kinds of legal and other restrictions from the government. Another very important thing is that civil society doesn't manufacture anything. So where does the money come from to run an organization? Therefore, funding is another very important and key area where civil society has to work, engage the corporates, engage different communities, engage people who are able to donate and gather funds to run their organizations. In countries which are volatile or in very difficult circumstances, Bangladesh passed through different difficult circumstances throughout the history. In India, we also have faced, in our northeast, in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, there are militant groups which often oppose dialogue, and threats can come from them.
And please, because of time, last sentence, or please wrap up.
And also from socio-cultural institutions. There are cultural and social differences often, religious differences often, and therefore civil societies often, sometimes, unfortunately, represent a particular group. That also happens, and here again, problems may arise.
Excellent, thank you. One brief follow-up question. 1 or 2 sentence answer. Civil society is important. What do you think about governments making it a requirement that young people have to do a civil service project for a half a year? We'll get to Germany in a moment because there was something similar to that in the past. Saying
I feel that's a very good idea.
Yeah, a half year, 1 year. Saying
yeah, 1 year of internship in an organization where they can hone up their skills, know the society, learn about the problems in our society. It's just not earning and making your own career. A young guy has to make himself more usable to the larger public for the country. And therefore, an internship in a civil society organization is always a welcome.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Felix, I know now you've been here in Bangladesh for several months, but originally from Germany. I'm living there now in Hamburg. In Germany, the government is actively fighting misinformation and fake news. In Germany, like several other places around the world, there's a rise of populism, the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, Alternative for Germany. So I wanted to ask you, as the government ministries that are working in their respective fields to correct these cases of misinformation, are they having some success? How do you view that?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank the Center for Governance Studies and its fantastic staff for what they have put here together in a relatively short amount of time. It is now the afternoon of the third day after lunch, and we still have a packed audience, which is testimony to the appealing offer that has been made here, and also to your engagement in taking part, participating in debate. And that is also partly what my answer will be about. Well, first, concerning Germany. There are many elements to the answer. The one I would like to emphasize is, well, progress is being made. It's very slow. And I think this is not only an initiative of government, but of society as a whole, where we learn to deal with fake news and learn to evaluate social media, which largely get their credibility on the assumption that, hey, that is somebody I know. There's some personal element in there that makes it credible, rather than competition between professional newspapers where credibility has a higher importance. We are making slow progress because what I see as the main background development is an erosion of trust in government. This is a long-term process. The COVID epidemic has been a key element when the private lives of many people have been turned upside down, and when there was a deep-seated shock that created the feeling that, well, things are not working right and there is something going on that is being hidden from us that we don't understand. And this feeling continues to linger on, and we have had a series of crises since that have been accumulating with higher energy costs due to the absolutely necessary transition to green energies, We have a war in Europe in our immediate neighborhood that is proving very costly. We have the aftermath of the COVID epidemic with high inflation, stagnating wages, and so on and so on. And a global situation where the West loses its dominance. That is certainly something that is more of a concern for the West than for you. But it all contributes to a loss of trust and a impetus in feeling, well, there is some hidden information out there, and I have the privilege of having access to this information by knowing somebody who can tell it, and let's say, like, pass it under the table. We all know that this is a very weak mechanism to assure truth. But I think it's a societal way in which we learn different ways of engaging with that. We have all kinds of initiatives, media initiatives to uncover fake news. We have government campaigns, but they will only go to a certain way when the social basis is not there. We, as Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, we are a think tank. We try to create and to disseminate knowledge and truth. But very often it's also not only about what is true. The way we create knowledge has something to do with how we arrange pieces of information. Very often, those arrangements that have strong interests behind them, government interests, state interests, business interests, are the ones that are better positioned and get more widely spread. The more repressive a society, the more likely it is that the news available in media, even social media, in academia, in education, and so on, will be the one promoting certain interests, whether fake or not. We are a value-based organization, as so many others in the civil society field. And we arrange pieces of information in a way that pays attention to social justice, that is a share in the economy of those who are producing the labor and who are too weak to impose their interests. And we value participation, a say of many, in the belief also that this creates a better world. And when you arrange the knowledge in a way that you say, well, in order to advance, a society needs order. It suggests that you need discipline, you need obedience, you have quite some legitimate coercion. The piece of knowledge that those who are in power may abuse the power for their own benefit, may thereby stifle potential of the population, may actually exploit, and may not even get that piece of information because they don't have to listen to the information, so they won't change course. When you emphasize that piece of information, it suggests to place less emphasis on obedience and to be less tolerant towards coercion.
Last sentence, please.
Okay, well, we are working together with partners here in Bangladesh as well as in other countries. We are defining the issues that we consider important together. We commission studies, we do trainings and dissemination events. By doing these, we create the time, the opportunity for intellectuals to do research on certain topics, build that capacity. They may use that capacity not only in the studies that may be taken up by government, civil society, whoever, but they may also use it in other teaching, other publications that they are doing and have a larger impact. And together with many others like us, we are creating and maintaining an infrastructure of alternative knowledge that is not directly influenced by the powers that be.
Thank you.
And well, last sentence really.
Please.
I'm very happy right now that many individuals from the partner institutions that we are working with are now contributing pro bono in these government commissions that this interim government has set up in order to define a new way for Bangladesh, and we wish you all the best in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Felix. Felix, one quick follow-up question. So living in Germany, there used to be a Wehrpflicht. So young people had to go to the military for a few years, but they could also choose to do a civil society project. This stopped, I think, about 10 years ago, but it was fascinating. These civil society projects, they could be working in a retirement home, they could be working in a national park, really something to deal with the country and give a connection to the country and give back. That's been gone for about 10 years. And it's interesting, I hear it not only from older Germans, but from younger Germans that they miss it. Not that they want to be in the military and have wars, but especially for the civil dienst, that they had that requirement to do something with and for the country. Your opinion on that? Is that something, and I briefly asked it before, something where we say a half a year mandatory for young children or students that they go and do something, it may not be well paid, but some kind of civil society project? Because I go back to it, to do something in goodwill sounds nice, but in reality sometimes it doesn't bring big results in my experience. Felix.
Well, in many ways, we may see a comeback of that, actually. It has technically only been suspended for a while, not abolished, and it's a very current situation. In some ways, we had created a zero-wage, low-skilled sector in much of the care economy that had a lot of deficits in that too. And I would look for a different kind of civic engagement and indeed that defense service. Nowadays, there are a lot of people who still want to do it, but nowadays that places a severe constraint on your career. You lose a year or more for doing that kind of engagement, and it's not that it's overly valued in much of society. And it's about this effectively punishing some kind of social engagement while you're young, while you're having the time and will to look around and do some other things. I think that's the main challenge, and we should find a way to create a room for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Naween, I can see you there. Hello. Good talking to you at lunch as well. We had a good conversation. Thank you for jumping in last minute to our panel. You're a professor here in Dhaka. And I had to ask, I've been talking to some of the people here. You know, we hear about this demonstration and revolution that happened in August. And then I read something like the internet was shut down, and we had that in an earlier panel today, shut down for a week or so. Social media channels, everything was off. So the first question I have is, in a world that's so digitally connected, can you just share with us, especially those that are not from Bangladesh, how was it to be forced off of line for days at an end in a digital world?
You know, I think, well, first of all, thank you for organizing this conference. This has been a wonderful 3 days. I will start by saying that, you know, when I think about those days, sometimes I forget what happened over 1 week, and it's that 1 week where there was no internet. And I was thinking that, you know, our brains have now been captured by internet in such a way that, you know, as we are trying to draw up timelines, somehow that disappears. And then I have to tell myself that, no, let's just go back to actual things that happened, I did, versus things that I saw on Facebook or on social media or something, right? So, you know, I just wanted to start there and say that this entire period over a whole week where there was no internet ended up being very useful, right? For a variety of actors. But I think critical was how this period became a place where conspiracy theories thrived so well, right? Because all we could get was information, disparate information, just little bits of information that we could piece together from different sources. We'd call up our journalist friends, we'd call up our friends connected to some political institution or the other, and try and figure out, and go out onto the streets and try and figure out what's happening. So this was a period where I think we've all turned into detectives or journalists if we were not really participating on the streets ourselves, right? And so this brought out consumption of one thing that I think over the recent years we've seen decline in, which is traditional media, like actually watching TV. I myself didn't have cable TV, so I had to go and get it and actually watch it. And I think what was really important and useful is to figure out how traditional media and new media or social media worked together or did not work together, right? How at a time when traditional media wasn't giving us what we wanted, and we couldn't go out onto social media platforms to find news or even to express or report on what was happening, we were trying to figure out how else to communicate, right? And it's this milieu in which we see this emergence of conspiracy theories becoming so useful, right? And it was more so because some of these conspiracy theories would actually pan out, right? And we would say, I was right, and including things like, how long do you think Sheikh Hasina is going to last? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 2 months, and that was the sort of political culture of the time, if you will.
Yeah.
Right, and I think what was also critical in this period, as we were sort of piecing information together, is to sort of go back to whatever was already online, and then seeing how there was this resonance between what was coming up online in the form of memes and so on, and graffiti and wall painting. Right? So now that people weren't expressing themselves online, they were actually expressing themselves on the streets in the form of slogans, in the form of wall art, right? And I think what was really powerful was this synchronization, right? That things you saw on social media were also things that were appearing on walls, were also things that were coming out in the form of slogans. But at the same time, I think what was interesting and disheartening was what we were hearing from how the rest of the world was reporting on Bangladesh, right? So bits and pieces of information from calls abroad and so on made it very clear to us that everyone was thinking that there was of course there was a crisis going on. Of course, there was a repression going on and so on. But that this continued fear of this Islamist threat that was sort of being conjured up by the rest of the world, right? So, we could hear about news media coming from India, from the United States and so on, that had this sort of unified approach to dealing with the student uprising, sort of trying to label the student movement in a particular fashion even before we could really realize or figure out what was happening, right? So instead of taking pause to take stock of what was happening, instead of helping to actually figure out what was happening in terms of how many people were getting killed, or what were snipers doing up on the roofs, how come there were IDF-style shooting here in Dhaka. It was instead of actually condemning those, it was as if it's these students who were to be blamed, as if there was this Islamist threat, as a result of which various infrastructures were kind of attacked, right? But I think it's important to note that these were very particular sites of infrastructure, right? The metro rail, which was Sheikh Hasina's pet project, the expressway, again, her pet project. These were not just random hooliganism or acts of terrorism. These were actually attacks to register discontent against a particular government. So for example, there were no riots, right? No stores were broken into. There were, we know what riots look like from around the world.
Last sentence,
right?
please.
Right, and so I guess just to last sentence. There is there is no last sentence, right? In the sense that this is an ongoing conversation. But I think what we've seen is that the thing that we expect from media, right, the communication between people and governments and people in the rest of the world, there's been a major crisis over there.
Yeah. Please. Professor, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question. This is a trend. Young people get most of their news from social platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, and co. And especially, we haven't talked so much about algorithms, but algorithms, let's say if I like a musician and I want to hear the music of that musician, the algorithms keep pushing me that music. That may be fun in a cultural sense. When it comes to news, if I'm for an issue or against a country's policy, the algorithm sees it and it keeps pushing those stories that basically reinforce my beliefs rather than giving me news. Is that an issue that you're dealing with here in Bangladesh as well? And people say, how can we solve it? Talking to the government, talking to the high-tech companies? I wanted to ask you that, Professor.
Well, we would of course like to solve it, right? I think I'm out of my depth in talking about how exactly you fix those algorithms. I don't know. We bring in the scientists who work on these algorithms, the computer scientists, Google, Facebook, get them in check. Global governance, what do international organizations do? We have representatives here. Can there be a way in which we rein them in? This has been particularly problematic during the Rohingya genocide,
yes.
Right? That we've essentially seen a genocide live on TV, and then we're seeing another genocide live on TV in Palestine. And think about how the media and these algorithms push us in a polarized direction, right? We are increasingly in a polarized world, and social media aids that. It feeds us what we want to see, often lies, misinformation, and this is where we are. I don't know. I think these are the kind of things that international treaties should be made of.
Great. Thank you very much. Good. Coming up now to Sohail. Sohail, also, I enjoyed our conversation during lunch. So we'll say good news, bad news. I'll start with the good news. I visited Pakistan a few years ago. Northern Pakistan is some of the most beautiful mountains and sceneries that I've seen in my life. So kudos to your country. Good news. Let's move over to some of the more bad news. Doing some research in 2024 World Press Freedom Index, Reporters Without Borders ranked Pakistan as country 152 out of 180 countries, underscoring severe decline in press freedom. Can you tell us what is the condition and state of the media in your country in Pakistan?
Well, thank you so much. And let me begin by extending my congratulations to CGS and Mr. Zillur Rahman for organizing this edition of the Bay of Bengal conversation. And I think the most heartening thing has been the very active participation of the youth here. And I think that it is critically important that youth be included as a very important stakeholder in this policy discourse. Now, before I come to your specific question, I do want to focus on what we are experiencing in the information domain, and especially with the advent of the modern technologies. And I'll focus both on traditional media and the social media. And there are 4 quick points that I would like to make. One, there is a phenomenal transformation in the information landscape because of the technological advancements, and 3 things have happened as a result. One, there is unprecedented rise in the speed, scope, and reach of information. 2, there is an unprecedented empowerment of all actors, state actors, non-state actors, and individuals. And 3, technology and authorities have still not found a way of verifying and especially establishing the authenticity of what passes as information. So as a result, disinformation and misinformation have become tools of division, of diversion, and conflict. The second point is that the jury is still out. We don't know whether the advent of social media has been a bane or a boon. On the positive side, you see that it could be a tool for education. It could be a positive mobilizer for political mobilization. It could speedify your response in disaster situations and all that. But on the other hand, you also see that as a purveyor of hate speech, reinforcer of stereotypes, traditional biases. You see stigmatization, even glorification of extremism, and even live streaming of terrorist incidents as well. So this is a real huge problem. How do we counter that? I think you asked this question to the previous speaker also. In my view, this is both a multidimensional and multi-stakeholder enterprise, and in which the state, the civil society, the tech companies, the social media platforms, academia, and also individuals have a role to play, and particularly when hate speech is there, it has to be called out. The companies have to be told that this detrimental material has to be removed quickly, and also to ensure that there is good dynamic interaction among these stakeholders if we can, we want to control this. The last point is that we need international collaboration also. And I'm very glad that the UN Secretary General has taken an initiative, and he has called for what is known as information integrity. And he has called for developing a global code of conduct to ensure that information is conveyed with integrity. And now the relevant department in the United Nations, the Department of Global Communications, has started working on certain principles for this code of conduct, which will ensure information integrity. So I think when we are dealing with accurate reporting and its impact on societies and also for conflict resolution, supporting this initiative of the Secretary General is also important, apart from taking national actions. Now, coming to your specific question, one thing that I can tell you is that we are very proud of in Pakistan is the independent media. It's very vibrant, it is independent, and if you look at media, both print as well as electronic, you would be amazed with the wide range of opinion that you see freely expressed. And this freedom and this exercise of this freedom by the media is supported by two other elements: a very dynamic civil society and a very informed citizenry. And whenever matters go to court, we have seen that courts tending to support this freedom as well. Now, of course, what we are dealing with is the advent of the modern technology, especially some media platforms being or used to communicate either fake news or opinions that could create difficulty or could have impact on public order. So you have this effort of finding the right balance. While this right and freedom is sacrosanct, how do we ensure that the technological innovation are not used or abused to create difficulties in society?
Okay, and a follow-up question. So for me, a factor to see how free a media or a country is how openly you can criticize its own government. I think Bangladesh is also dealing with this question. So without getting too specific, in Pakistan, can journalism openly criticize the government and the leading powers that be?
Well, I can tell you, you go to the Dawn website, you go to Urdu newspapers, you go to any TV channel, and in the evening we have these talk shows where you have anchors who bring people coming from all walks of life and representing all parts of the political spectrum, and they come and they talk about the government policies, they support their own political parties, so everybody is represented and you have a very dynamic debate. And I just invite you, you've been to Pakistan long years ago, I wish you could come again, and you also get a taste of our media as well.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
We have time here for one or two more questions on the panel, then I'll definitely open it up for some Q&A in our audience. I already see a hand, give me one moment. Arjun, one question. I recently read, in Europe, that I believe it was the country of Malta was contemplating to put a fine on fake news. That means that if they caught someone posting fake news, that they could fine them up to, I think it was 1,000 euros, and even have the possibility of doing some jail time. Your reaction on this kind of an idea to combat fake news and disinformation?
Similar ideas have, of course, been discussed because fake news is a pandemic. There are misinformation and disinformation campaigns deliberately part of the propaganda, which is peddled out time and again. But again, let's engage here. So we consider media for that matter. Earlier or before the idea, or before internet or before social media came in, the only truth that people heard or knew of was the truth of the government or some specific corporate houses. It is only the first time through internet and through social media platforms that you are listening to such diversity of opinions. How else would you know? Consider some village in Uttar Pradesh, which is a very large state in India. What is their opinion about certain matters? The only thing that you would ever hear from traditional media houses is how the narratives are going to be. And then something similar that Bangladeshi students also perhaps saw. The only narrative that they would hear was what the previous regime would peddle out. Who is going to counter it? How a counter narrative is to be formed is going to be a consequence of social media platforms. Two, of course, like I said earlier, there's always a self-correction. Society has a way of self-correcting. It's these conversations, it's these engagements. Like ma'am was suggesting earlier, like you're suggesting, the idea of making it. It's a contentious idea because it also brings in the idea of freedom of press or freedom of speech. Can I say, would we want the government to stifle my voice? Would I want the government to put me in, throw me in front of crosshairs with the fear, or should I voice out of opinion, fearing that if it was remotely wrong, I might be put behind bars or fined? I think that's something to wonder, question, debate, and analyze. But of course, something needs to be done, which is why governments across the world are, discussing and debating this idea of what needs to be done. In India, of course, much like Malta, this was very much in conversation. We did bring this forward. The governments have been mulling over it, but it does not, and this is how India is managing it. We are taking our own time. If there are some specific platforms which are consistently putting out fake news or consistently putting up disinformation, and it threatens public law and order, the government is carefully monitoring it, and when comes the time, or if there comes a time, there's certain curbs need to be there.
Last sentence, please, because of time. Is that good?
Well, of course. Another thing, these points came across while others were delivering their statements. I think both civil society and media are good bridges. You've got to have, so many a time it's a media which is much better informed about the opposition than the government, and it's the case the vice versa. Similarly, civil society is the bridge which brings the politics and policy together. The governments may not, in the high horses, they have little idea about what the ground is saying, what people are talking about, how they think, and what their ideas are. And is it finding proper reflection in the governance? It's the civil society which gives that reflection. Another thing, of course, when you spoke about serving in civil society or serving in the army, I think I'm a nationalist in that sense. I think living for your country is a good way to live, and dying for your country is a great way to die. So with that, I think
very good. Truly nationalist. Thank you. Yeah. Felix, a question. The Friedrich Ebert Foundation, the Stiftung, it's one of the largest in Germany. You are here in Bangladesh. I'd like to know why. Why did you choose to come here? Because some of the other big organizations, like the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, also a fantastic group, they're not here. So why are you all here in Bangladesh?
Well, it is still one of the largest countries in the world, and we are aware of that.
It can just be a brief answer. Don't be too deep, but just general, because it's important that you're here. But from my heart, I'd like to know why.
Well, we are an organization, as I said, that takes social justice seriously. Bangladesh is a country that has recently been industrializing rapidly with many of the opportunities that are arising, but many of the issues that accompany that in terms of dangerous labor conditions, very low wages, effectively wages below living wages, environmental destruction, the air that we start breathing here now and that we will start breathing more over the next few months is getting less healthy and causing more costs for all of us. So these are issues that we are addressing with our research, with our training worldwide where we are. And we are very fortunate to still be here as the only one and see this political opening here and being able to involve a larger share of the population in that. And we very much hope that this will be an opportunity that is here to stay.
Super, thank you very much. I'd like to open it now to Q&A. I see a lot of hands here. So I don't know quite, we'll have the young lady in the beautiful red sari. You can start, you can make a lines here at the microphones. Now, yes please, also very good. I'd like to ask one, or just ask you all, again, one important fact, and I'll be very strict like I was to our distinguished guests about time. On the questions, I know we have a lot of opinions, especially with these three beautiful countries represented. Please try to be short on the opinion and get directly to your question. If it goes too long, I will ask you to go directly to the question. Please do not be upset. Please go ahead.
So my question, I'm Ho Chi Minh. My question is to Dr. Naveen Murshid.
And please close to the microphone so we can hear you very good. A little closer. Go ahead.
You were at the forefront of the movement with the University Teachers Network. And after the movement, we witnessed massive human rights violation, particularly against gender minorities. I often reflect on the connection between the body and the land. We are born on this soil, and our gender identities should never sever us from our civil rights.
Please tell us the question. Please tell us the question now.
Yeah.
Yes.
How can civil society play a more significant role in protecting and advocating for marginalized communities? Moreover, how can we hold civil society accountable given the persistent issues of class, caste, and elitism within its ranks? It's vital to ensure that no one becomes collateral damage in the pursuit of peace and justice. How do we prevent that?
Thank you for the question. Please.
Thank you for this question. I think what's one elephant in the room here as we talk about civil society is who is the civil society? Right? Who constitutes the civil society, right? And, we've talked about academics, about various development practitioners and so on. I think one missing link always is the working class. The working class is the largest population, the largest group, right? So as we think about a more just society, I think we need to look into ourselves and think about our own working class position. We are all workers. That's what unites us, irrespective of class, caste, gender, and so on, right? You're absolutely right. One of the fears that the Awami League government had instilled in all of us is the fear that without the Awami League, there will be a crisis in terms of the rights of minorities, the ability for people to practice their arts, their music, their culture. And I think that is something that has to obviously be confronted. And I think there's hope in the fact that in the post-BPLOB period, there were people who came out and tried to protect mandirs and mazars and so on. They had human chains up in order to protect them, right? So I think what's very important is that we protect minority rights, but it's equally important to make sure that these incidents however few, those are absolutely problematic, that those are not politicized and turned into something that it's not in order to justify foreign intervention, in order to justify militarization, and in order to delegitimize the current government, right? Because that's the danger that we see in these periods, right? So it's not that there isn't a danger that minorities might come under attack, but we have a responsibility to protect them. And I think in the long term, that can only come about if we can think about how civil society groups need to also include workers and recognize the collective power of the working class.
Super, thank you very much. Our next question, the gentleman here. And again, I'd ask the questions short, and also to our speakers, due to lack of time, we have to shorten the answers just a little bit. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Please
Nice and loud. We have the drone coming up in front of us here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay. Before my question, I have to say something. Before the question, so the student masses of Bangladesh have achieved new freedom through a spontaneous revolution against the autocratic regime without the help of any foreign power, which we call Bangladesh 2.0. But some countries cannot accept this independence and sovereignty of Bangladesh, which is very unexpected and sad.
Please come to the question.
Okay, please.
Yes.
They are spreading misinformations and propaganda about Bangladesh, especially Republic Bangla news channel. Yet Bangladesh is independent and sovereign. That is the truth. My specific question to respect Debjyoti sir, whether a news channel has the right to broadcast blatantly the misinformation about another country. Does the government of the country from which such misinformation is being spread take a responsibility to or warn against spreading such information?
Thank you. Please
I would
go
like
ahead.
to first inform you that Republic Bangla is hyper about everything. You have seen there, it's not
But
about
it's a part of that country.
It's not about Bangladesh alone. It is a channel when I go to, in a panel discussion, I am advised that please don't speak loudly. You have to speak very fast and shout always. That is our style. So this is Republic Bangla.
Sounds like Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's like that. Those who watch the channel knows it. Those who watch their anchors, they also know it. Ignore. You have done your job. Let them do their job. It's a very big country. I have come back. We are seeing what is happening. It's time. Narendra Modi was one of the first foreign leaders to send a congratulatory message to Dr. Yunus. We are working. Our ambassador was present here. Forget the channel. Ignore it. Don't see it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next question to our organizing panel. I don't have the countdown clock that they told me they would do. So if somebody gives me the 5-minute signal, I will start to wrap it out there when I see the 5-minute signal. Please, the gentleman here, and then I'll go to the woman. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Nice and loud.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is to Sohail Mahmood Sahab. How can Pakistan justify banning X to silence the criticism of the government, while the Prime Minister uses same platform to congratulate Donald Trump on his victory? I want a simple, short answer of it.
Thank you for the question. Please.
Well, as I said, their effort is to find the right balance. X has been used to communicate sometimes misinformation, sometimes mobilize in a way that could be detrimental to peace as well. It is not completely banned. Of course, there are times in which it is restricted, access to it is restricted. We as a think tank continues to use it, but there are gaps that I acknowledge. And obviously, this is a very important instrument whose importance or relevance cannot be discounted. And the Prime Minister also uses it to communicate his messages, and they use during those intervals as well. And if they find some other means also that I am not privy to. But again, this is something that the government perhaps is trying to find the right balance, and I am sure that it will be found.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Due to time, the last 4 people there, those will be the last 4 questions. We call this a lightning round. No lightning from the sky. Quick question, quick answer. Please, we'll go to the young woman here.
Hello everyone, I'm Naurin Sultana, studying Mass Communication and Journalism in University of Dhaka. So my question is, the filter bubble and echo chamber is creating polarization and radicalization of opinion. According to a study, news articles found via social media are associated with higher ideological segregation than those an individual reads by directly visiting news sites.
Please come to the question. Please come to the question.
Even if the mass media provides proper narratives, the people are exposed mostly to the narratives they prefer to get resonated with. The help of personalization and of information. So how can the mass media deal with this challenges in future? Thank you.
To anyone specifically or the panel?
Anyone from the panel.
Anyone want to take that?
I did not understand the
Arjun,
question.
go ahead, please.
Arjun, if you have understood.
I think it's a continuous conversation. You'll have these problems. You've had these problems before. These problems will continue to happen. And the solution will come from different stakeholders engaging in a conversation with each other. And that's perhaps the best way forward.
Excellent, thank you. To the gentleman here, and then two last questions. Please, here, the first one.
Hello everyone, this is MD Parvez Mahmood Niloy, currently doing my undergrad in Mass Communication Journalism in Dhaka University. My question is to David. David, you have been in journalism and in media for a long time. Now, you have seen the recent US election. Mr. Donald Trump didn't go to the traditional medias for interviews and everything. He went for the alternative medias, the social medias, podcasts and everything. Where, in the other hand, Kamala Harris did the opposite. She got the offer from Joe Rogan for a podcast episode, but she didn't go. And also the media created a narrative that this election is going to be really pretty tight and pretty close, which didn't happen.
So what is the question?
Yeah, so my question is, there's a clear failure of traditional media in this year's election. How do you think traditional media will be able to bounce back? Before you answer, sir, ma'am, Miss Nabin Murshid ma'am, it's a great honor to be here under your presence. We have witnessed that you have been vocal about the movement and were there with us, with the students. Thank you for being there for your children. Thank you, ma'am. It's a great honor. And sir, please, your answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. I'll just keep it very brief. It's a very complicated question. I think it's very interesting when you're watching US politics, for example, the relationship of Elon Musk, him buying Twitter, now X, the algorithms that most of us don't know exactly what comes out. Many people have said those algorithms has helped Donald Trump. Then him winning and probably having front row seat, if not a cabinet position, and a newly formed cabinet position. So of course, social media, it's a slippery road. How much money can be used? Is it campaign financing? There's always been money and politics mixed in with media, but I think we've seen it at a new level. Number two, when you look at the elections, social media played a role. I broadcast about it for the last 4 months. It's a long list, but I will say one thing, and that is that when it came to social media, the podcast, you're right, Joe Rogan, even here in Pakistan, they're talking about Joe Rogan. This is a martial arts fighter that sits down and do 3-hour podcasts. He did it with J.D. Vance, the vice president. He did it with Donald Trump. He asked Kamala Harris not to do it, and many of the supporters were upset that she didn't go on this podcast and said because she can't do a 3-hour interview, we'll not vote for him. So the mediascape is changing very quickly, and I think the Democrats have to do some soul searching to come back. That's the very short answer on a big question. Thank you very much,
sir.
We're running out of time. The last two questions. Arjun, you want to jump in, please?
There's something similar that happened in India also. Recently, we had these Haryana elections. Yes. No, provincial state elections in India. There was a mainstream media which was projecting a clear Congress party win. The results were drastically opposite.
Which state?
Haryana. So in Haryana, we saw the same thing happen. Everybody across media was projecting that Congress party is going to win close to 60 plus or 70 seats. I remember on the voting day, everybody was anticipating that Congress is winning 72 seats, but it's a BJP which won the election. So there is, that thing where how the mainstream media is projecting these are going to be the numbers, but it's the social media and on-ground situation may perhaps be drastically different. So that's something.
Interesting. Thank you, Arjun. Last two questions, please, sir.
Greg Simons. So, on the word misinformation, it does not have to be false. It can be true but inconvenient for the government. It can challenge a policy. But coming to the question, given that the global north generally cannot even admit that there is a genocide and ethnic cleansing going on among the Palestinians, what kind of moral or ethical authority do you have to lecture the global south and other countries about managing their communications? Thank you.
Oh, a big question for a very short time. Does anyone want to take a stab at this? No? Professor? Yes, Sohail, please jump in.
Well, indeed, it's a critical question. We have seen, great moralizing from the, global north, how to manage their societies, what freedoms to uphold, and, how to create balanced situation for citizens on the alleged onslaught of states. And here we have seen a genocide taking place in tremendous global glare, and it is impossible for people in Western societies, the flag bearers of all these freedoms, to be, to describe what is happening, one, and even if there is a dissenting opinion from the governments also, then there are consequences for people also. So I think this dynamic or this dialogue between the global North and South also requires some adjustment, I would say.
I think I'd like to jump in too.
Yes, please.
Thank you
And
for
Felix also a
asking
final
this
word.
question, because I think the answer is pretty very, very simple, right? They do not have any moral authority, really, right? I think what's critical here is on the slightly positive side that the hypocrisy is very obvious, very clear now. So before they had this mask of humanity, of humanitarianism. Now that mask is no longer there. I would say these might be signs of a declining empire, but I need more time to explain that.
Great, thank you. Felix, please, briefly.
Well, I wouldn't say I agree with the premise of the question. I don't think we have been lecturing here, but as I started with the difficulties of trust and the broken trust in, let's say, the elite as such among a large share of the population, it's actually an issue that we share in the West as well as here. And some of the backgrounds may be different, but some of the answers to get to restoring trust and having a different kind of relation may be similar. Then on this front, and I don't really consider myself an optimist rather than realist, but I think also we should point out some self-correcting mechanisms that are working. And well, in the wake of 2nd October in Germany, we had a press that was extremely partisan, where you had, and many others in Europe had legitimate concerns about press freedom in Germany. I'd say the situation has turned around virtually 180, and not only in Germany. Just these days, we had Haaretz, the liberal Israeli newspaper, titling, "Maybe Israel is indeed committing genocide." And
Final sentence,
there
please.
are some mechanisms working. Thank you.
Super, thank you. We've run out of time, but this gentleman has been so patient waiting. So you get the last question, one sentence if you can, and our answer is very quick too. Please, sir.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Sure.
I am Shobhasachi from Harnet TV, and we are from world's first television on dedicated to women's well-being. My question is that while in South Asia, in the Bay of Bengal region, media has been criticized for sensationalization and polarization, what concrete frameworks do you recommend so that editorial independence and commercial viability is not lost, but responsible reporting and peace initiatives are intact?
Thank you. And who was that? Please.
There are codes of conduct everywhere. For a media unit to be commercially viable, it has to run. We have to pay the salary. And so we have to compromise sometimes. It's always not desired, but there must be balance. What is very important that when we are working, we need to see that there is balance between editorial freedom and policy and the commercial interests of the organization. That is all. It will be a continuous process because, again, in a very tough world where economics, today, that's why we have changed the terms also. Earlier it was the editor, and today we have the managing editor, who is also a manager who knows finances, and he's also the editor who knows journalism. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. The final word to Pakistan, but truly the final word. Go ahead.
Yes, quickly. Well, I think this has to do a lot with the business models of some of the channels also. So this whole race for TRPs is really damaging. So, among other things, all the stakeholders need to engage on how this can be revised so that instead of sensationalization, there is focus and more premium on accurate reporting and moderate opinions. And I think you said region-wide, we have some platforms like SARC, which is not very active these days, but this is one issue in the information domain that these governments and the countries of SARC can discuss how to address this issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Bay of Bengal conversation, what an honor it has been to moderate this session with people from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, from India. I kind of feel it's like Thanksgiving, same family, but maybe a few different opinions, but it's fantastic. Also representative from the Abert Foundation, one of the largest foundations. Everyone, please give a warm applause and a thank you to our panel. Thank you all very much.